For nearly 6 years, Daniel Harper had lived in silence, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, echoing silence that pressed against the walls of his small wooden house like winter fog. The kind that settled into his bones at night and reminded him that life had not turned out the way it was supposed to. His home sat on the edge of Pine Hollow, a forgotten mountain town where snow arrived early and stayed long. The house was modest, 2 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen, and a living room warmed by an old stone fireplace. Once laughter had filled those rooms. Once a woman's voice had softened the sharp corners of Daniel's world. But that was before illness, before loss, before everything changed. Now there was only him and his son. Ethan Harper was 9 years old, small for his age, with pale skin and eyes too old for a child. A rare heart condition had weakened him since birth, forcing him into a quiet life of medicines, hospital visits, and careful steps. Daniel had learned to read his son's breathing the way other men read weather signs. One shallow breath too many, one hand pressed to the chest, and Daniel's heart would seize with fear. Daniel had given up everything for Ethan, his job as a construction foreman, his friendships, any chance at love. After Ethan's mother died during childbirth, Daniel had promised at her grave that he would never leave their son alone in this world, and he hadn't, not for a single night. Every day followed the same pattern. Daniel woke before dawn, prepared Ethan's medicine, cooked simple meals, and worked odd jobs from home when he could. He read to Ethan by the fire, helped with schoolwork, and held him during the long nights when pain made sleep impossible. Loneliness was a luxury Daniel could not afford. Then came the snowstorm. It arrived suddenly, as Pine Hollow storms always did, thick, fast, and merciless. By evening, the road disappeared beneath white sheets, and the wind howled like something alive. Daniel had just tucked Ethan into bed when he heard it. A sound, not the wind, not the creaking house, a knock. Daniel froze. No one came this far up the mountain at night, especially not in a storm. His first thought was that he imagined it. But then it came again, weak, desperate. Daniel grabbed his coat and opened the door. A woman collapsed onto the porch. She wore a wedding dress. It was torn, soaked, and smeared with mud and blood. Her veil hung in tatters, and her lips were blue from cold. Snow clung to her dark hair, and her hands trembled uncontrollably as she tried, and failed, to push herself up. "Please," she whispered. I couldn't go anywhere else." Daniel didn't hesitate. He scooped her into his arms and carried her inside. The heat of the fire revived her slowly. Daniel wrapped her in blankets and brought warm tea, kneeling beside the couch as she shivered. He noticed bruises along her wrists and the faint mark of a slap on her cheek. She looked broken. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice cracking. "I didn't think anyone would open the door." Daniel shook his head. "You're safe here." At the sound of voices, Ethan peeked from the hallway, clutching his blanket. "Dad," he whispered. The woman's eyes filled with tears when she saw him. "I didn't mean to scare you," she said gently. Ethan studied her wedding dress, then smiled shyly. "Are you a princess?" The woman let out a broken laugh. "Something like that." Her name was Clara Monroe. She had been rejected at the altar, not quietly, not kindly. Her fiancé, the town's golden boy, had accused her of betrayal in front of everyone. Claims that were untrue, cruel, and devastating. Her own family had sided against her, ashamed and furious. In a matter of minutes, Clara lost her future, her home, and her place in the town she had grown up in. She fled into the storm with nowhere to go. And somehow, fate brought her to Daniel's door. She stayed the night, then another, then another. Clara helped without being asked. She cooked meals, cleaned quietly, and read stories to Ethan in a voice that soothed his pain. She never pried, never judged. She carried her grief with dignity, even when Daniel caught her crying softly by the window at night. For the first time in years, the house felt warm. Ethan grew attached to her quickly. She taught him card games, painted with him, and braided his hair when his hands were too weak. When he had bad days, she sat beside him and whispered stories about brave boys and second chances. Daniel watched from a distance, unsure how to feel. He was afraid of hope, afraid that letting her in would only mean more loss, but Clara didn't push. She stayed because she wanted to, not because she needed to. One evening, weeks later, Ethan had an episode. His breathing became labored, his face pale. Daniel panicked, his hands shaking as he reached for the phone. Clara took over calmly. She helped administer the medication, held Ethan upright, and spoke to him softly until the danger passed. Afterward, Daniel broke down. "I can't lose him," he whispered. Clara placed a hand over his. "You won't face it alone anymore." That was the night Daniel realized he had already let her into his heart. But happiness never comes without a test. Clara's past caught up with her. Her former fiancé arrived at the house one afternoon, his expression dark. He demanded she come back, demanded she clear his name, demanded control. Daniel stood between them. "You're not welcome here," he said quietly. The man laughed. "You think you can protect her?" Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "She chose where she belongs," he said. "Now leave." Clara watched, stunned, as the door closed on her past. That night, she told Daniel everything, every fear, every humiliation, every broken dream. Daniel listened. Then he said something he hadn't said in years. "I need you." Tears streamed down Clara's face. Winter softened into spring. Ethan's health improved in ways doctors couldn't explain. Laughter returned to the house. Meals were shared. Mornings felt lighter. One evening, Daniel took Clara's hands. "This isn't a rescue," he said. "This is a family, if you want it." Clara nodded through tears. "I've wanted it since the night I fell at your door." They married quietly. No grand ceremony, no crowd, just love. Years later, Ethan would say that the best miracle of his life wasn't survival. It was the night a broken bride found her way home.